I was playing Containment Failure with a friend when I deliberately discarded an item, knowing he could interpret it in one of two ways. One of those ways would almost certainly get us killed, and the other one would probably lead us to victory. I then waited anxiously for him to take his turn without saying a word, and when he did the exact thing I hoped he would, and we won. We won the game without a word spoken between us. We could fully understand what the other one wanted to do, and that, in my opinion, is where limited communication as a mechanic can really shine in a board game. Board games are almost by definition a social thing. For me, the best thing about them is getting a group of people round the table and sharing an experience together, whether that's a cooperative one, a competitive one, or anything in between. It isn't about the game for me as much as it is about the people around the table. So introducing limited communication in a game almost feels like a juxtaposition to that. Why would you bring these people around the table and then not let them talk to each other? Well, there's a few good reasons, and I think all of them can make the experience better. There are four main reasons I think limited communication can really improve a game. The first of those is that tension I mentioned earlier. Trying to place a dice, a card, any component, anything you do is being judged by the other players to try and work out exactly what you're doing and why. That extra tension can really build throughout a game, and it's been a standout in the design of Containment Failure. Several of the playtesters have commented how the limited communication really added to the tension. Now, while limited communication might stop you talking to the people around the table, it doesn't stop you communicating with them. And non-verbal attunement with the other people around the table can feel great. Lots of games try and do this, and when you feel fully in tune with other people around the table, where you're all working in sync without having to say a word, that's a great feeling and is still a really good social experience, even though you're not talking to each other. The third reason is that it's a natural solution to quarterbacking. I've gone into quarterbacking and how one of the ways of solving it is limited communication in a lot of detail in a previous video, so I won't dwell on it too much here. But when players can't freely say what they want to each other, it becomes much harder for one player to dictate what the other should do. And the fourth one, which I only really thought of recently, is that it makes you think differently. Every time you place an item, you're thinking of the different ways it could be interpreted. And likewise, when someone else takes an action on their turn, you start thinking of all the things they could be trying to convey to you. It brings up really creative solutions of trying to convey information without just saying it. And for me, it's one of the standout reasons I think limited communication works really well in some games. While I've been talking about limited communication as if it's a single mechanic, really it's a very broad spectrum from being completely unable to verbally communicate with people to having certain constraints around what you can or can't say. Here are some of the ways I think games limit communication and the type of limit they apply. Starting with a really popular one, Codenames. Codenames doesn't block you from communicating, and communicating is actually one of the core mechanics of the game, but it heavily restricts what you can say. You're allowed to say a word and a number and nothing else. So again, you need that creative thought process to try and work out what's the most effective thing that you can convey in just one word and one number. And that's the whole point of the game. You have all these other cards that you don't want people to think that you're trying to convey to them. So there's a really wide array of ways you can think of words, and trying to plow through that mess and find the ones that they are trying to convey, while avoiding the ones that they are very deliberately trying to make sure you don't get, is really the fun of the game. Another constrained but not completely limited communication game is Hanabi. One of the actions you can take in that game is to tell the other player what they're holding, because their cards are facing away from them. However, the rules are very specific about what you can say. You can point to all of the cards of a number and tell them what number they are, or you can point to all of the cards of a colour and tell them what colour they are. You can't choose to ignore any of them. You can't opt out of telling them a specific card is that number. You have to give that exact information and nothing else. Working within those constraints is part of the fun of the game, trying to work out what the most helpful thing you could tell them is. Another game with heavily structured communication is The Crew Mission Deep Sea. I haven't actually got round to playing this yet, but it's on my shelf behind me. In this game, you are taking tricks cooperatively to try and meet certain objectives. Now, once per mission, you can choose to communicate. The way you do this is by taking a card from your hand, placing it face up in front of you, and putting a token on it. The token can be placed in one of three positions to indicate it's the highest value card of that colour, the only value card of that colour, or the lowest value card of that colour. And that's it. You can't say anything else. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot of information, but when you're playing a trick-taking game, there is a lot that you can convey with which card you choose to place down. So it seems like it will create some really interesting situations, and I'm keen to get it to the table. My game I'm working on, Containment Failure, takes an interesting approach to communication, where it's an explicit action you can take with a danger associated with it. When you do communicate, though, you're free to say whatever you like, but it's a strictly one-way communication. So while you're not constrained by what you can say, every time you take a noisy action in the game, the alien which is hunting you gets one step closer to finding you. So there's a real risk associated with you communicating. If you want to follow along with the journey of Containment Failure, you can sign up for my email list at my website, which is in the description below. You'll get updates, and soon a print and play version is going to go up there for playtesting, so you can try it for yourself. In the meantime, you'll still get access to Station Decimus, my push your luck competitive game, which is on there as a free print and play when you sign up. Finally, a game with no verbal communication at all, The Mind. The aim of The Mind is to get all the players in sync and really focus on what I mentioned earlier about feeling in tune with each other. The whole aim of the game is to place all of your cards in the correct order in the middle of the table. You will, however, not be able to tell anyone about your cards, and you have to put them in the right order. So if I place a card down, the next person who places a card has to place the next highest card, and we can't miss any. So if someone else jumps in thinking they might have the next highest card, they'll have got it wrong and will lose. Instead, you need to place them in the exact correct order without saying a word to each other. It really makes you feel like you're in sync with the other people around the table once you get going on it, and if you win, it's a really great feeling that brings the table together. So those are some examples of games on the spectrum of communication, and I think it's a really interesting mechanic to play around with. Lots of games do it in different ways, and it can create some real tension and some real synchronization between people around the table, and create those standout moments which you want with a board game. So those are some of my thoughts on communication as a mechanic. As I said at the start, board games are a social thing, and limited communication doesn't have to stop that. In fact, in some cases, it can accentuate it. The silence isn't an absence of a social experience, and it's just a different kind of one. If there are any standout games with limited communication that you can think of, drop a comment below and let me know.